radio at all. Not even with the bombing plane that's coming over. All radio is dead.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Welcome to Horror of the Worlds, where we hope you horror appalled. Thanks for joining our cult today. I'm Stephen Miller.
I'm Curtis Gerhardt.
And today we are actually going to talk to you about cults. Let's start off with the definition of a cult. It's a system of religious reveration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. Another definition for it, one that's a little bit more familiar, is a relatively small group having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. And I feel like that's where some of these people will fit in today.
I could see that.
Yeah, so the first one on the list is everybody's favorite, Jim Jones. He was known as the Father. He was mostly known for forming Jonestown. Jonestown in 1976, 78.
Off the top of my
is
head,
when
I do not know.
It started. The big shit happened in 78.
I know he's like one of the ones that everyone knows about, but they don't know about at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lot of buildup. Like, I feel like out of all the cults, this is the one where you see the longest structure being formed. Probably like 10, 15 years in the act.
And at least I want to say with our generation and older are the ones that actually at least know about Jonestown.
Yeah.
At least, because I want to say he's the most famous cult leader. Or even if you don't know Jim Jones, you probably heard of Jonestown, or even one of the famous sayings, which I'm pretty sure you'll get to here in a few minutes. But I can't think of any other cult leaders that, kids nowadays would probably know of or think of.
No,
I feel like Jim Jones is
not.
still probably the king of cults. That's not.
I feel like
that's
this
a
is
legitimate cult.
This is a particular one that everybody should know because know your leaders, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy probably started a lot of what we see in politics today, for the most part. I mean, as far as how gaining followers and preaching is concerned,
they're a imperfect version of leadership.
Yeah,
like they are very good at being a leader. Like regardless of what evils that some of these cults do. Some cults, not all cults are bad. Like not all of them are bad. Some of them are actually very good. Good for the society. Good for the people that are inside the cult. But these are the ones that create bad names. These are the ones that give cult a bad name.
Absolutely. With this particular cult, he started it in the mid to late 70s. And he brought everybody down to, where is it? Guyana, South America. Mm-hmm. And that's where he wanted to start this town because he felt like it was the best place for him to gain power and a good structure. He wanted a strong following and protection because he had gained a paranoia from the American government.
He didn't want America or the CIA or FBI at the time to stop what he was trying to do. That whole paranoia kind of kicks in, but he wanted his own, pretty much police his own society that he created.
No, by the time this whole thing started, you're wondering how the fuck he had all these people following him. Almost 1,000 people, like standing up for his name. But beforehand, he seemed like a pretty chill guy. Like no offense to any priests or anything like that. Like this guy just seemed like he wanted peace for his people and pretty much created a community or a commune out in the middle of South America to preach that.
He weaponized religion.
Yep.
Because I want to say he was I'm pretty sure it was Jim Jones that was a pretty smart kid. He had a great memory when it came to reading the Bible and all that stuff. He was able to repeat a lot of the verses, and he was a great I think his term was pastor at the time. I can't remember his exact spot when he actually started up in the church, but he was a great leader in it. But then, shit kind of went south. He didn't like what certain churches around him were doing.
Right.
Like
he liked their methods, but he didn't like exactly how they're falling out. One of his favorite forms seemed to be gospel, and that's how he got a larger mix of people going to his sermons and things like that. He preached like in terms of anybody else, like a black woman speaking in gospel churches. That's how he mixed it up.
Yeah.
He had a lot of positive vibrations and things like that he carried to each and every one of his sermons and stuff like that. And it carried out through almost the last fucking day. And that's how he got everybody to drink the Kool-Aid.
That's like one thing I kind of hate. Like, I do kind of try to see the silver lining or the positive notes in some of these horrible people. Like, without a doubt, these people are fucking bad people. Or he's a bad person with some bad people behind him. But I still like to look at it as if these people didn't have this warped sensibility and wanting to create their own world, they would be great fucking leaders.
Oh yeah,
like if it was actually for good. So I mean, that's how I always try to look at it. It's like the whole what if. I feel like it's a Marvel like what if comic. What if Jim Jones ran for president and didn't have a cult?
Yeah, right. Have a country.
Like I don't know.
Well, let's start with the People's Temple, description of that. It was later known as Jonestown, and it was built by the people that lived there with long hours of abuse and intimidation. was where Jim Jones started showing his dark side. This is where the paranoia started kicking in.
Becoming more of a dictator.
Yes, he upon arrival, he took everybody's passports and shit. Nobody had money or anything like that. It was more like he gathered the money, and the money went towards the community. Mm-hmm. So he carried out a typical communist kind of way of doing things. Not that I have anything against all communists, but there's an evil way to run shit, and this guy was at least trying to put forth on food and things like that.
He's not my comrade.
He's not calling my comrade either. When people were falling asleep during the building of this, he would threaten them with guns and things like that. And nobody else on the site had weapons. He was the only one with a handgun, and he hired locals in South America to be his armed guards at the perimeter of the territory. So that was pretty much where the people there were standing.
I know I have to say this so it's out of my head. I may or may not go in the video, but I feel almost kind of weird saying my comrade and almost saying communist, especially after the World War II episode where like I was borderline praising the Russian movie I talked about and the Russian Air Force.
Russians were brutes, dude. They're brutes.
They were.
Yeah.
Like they were fighters.
Now, I can't remember whether it was ABC or NBC. I'm pretty sure it was ABC News Company. Finally went over there to do a report on Jonestown because they had heard about this being built and who built it. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to see how it was going, and they brought a crew with them to kind of check out the community, and that's when it created a big stir. That's when not only Jim Jones, but some of the people started reporting to the news crew that, hey, man, if you got a way out, I want to fucking go with you. Mm-hmm. And this created a fucking uproar. All of a sudden, in a matter of a day, you had hundreds of people that were trying to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, everyone was, like, I think it was like during the whole the insurgents, I guess you could call it, like when they had the Newsacre, and I think it was like a governor or something.
It was a political figure was there with them
and stuff. And we knew when they were doing all the speeches, because I mean, Jim Jones, he was also he had his I guess prayers and all that stuff on repeat throughout the loudspeakers. He pre-recorded all this stuff, so it was 24/7 prayer, his speech going around all the time. So
it was good old brainwashing.
That's pretty much it. Like one thing that makes a great cult is you keep them awake, you make them weak, and they're very susceptible to brainwashing. That is one of the signs of a bad cult. But when they were doing the recording for the news, everyone seemed happy. Everyone was in prayer. Everyone had their arms up. They were just praising. They were happy until the cameras went off.
That's one of those things you don't let the Father, as they called him, see you fear or want to waver away from him, because that's when things get fucking violent. And during this visitation, the political leader that was there ended up getting threatened with a knife, and instead of him getting stabbed, the person that was wielding the knife ended up dying on the spot. And when he went back to the I believe it was a helicopter to get him out of there, he's like, we're going to get a plane to get all you guys out of here. And he was covered in blood, but it was the guy's blood that was trying to do the attempt against him. A guy that was clearly hired by Jim Jones to take this motherfucker out, because as soon as he got wind, he tried to take this shit down.
It was pretty much Jim Jones had a double agent.
Yes.
Like I don't really recall if he was working. I don't know if he was really working for Jim Jones or if he was just
A devotee,
part of the devotee.
Yeah, that seems to be how it was. After that, things got hairy quick. Like, the planes arrive, people start loading up, and his hired South American comrades that were protecting the border went over there and just shot the shit up. Took out everyone, the pilot and everything.
And there were only, I think, like 3 or 4 survivors during that whole incident because they ran out in the bushes, they ran out in the jungle, and some of them played dead and hid under dead bodies.
Yeah.
Just so they could survive because
they were going around popping shots off at anybody else that survived. Yeah, it was about 100 ended up surviving out of that whole community of people. Beforehand, the long time, I want to say it was like 10 years of this brainwashing sequence, he would practice what was called a white knight ritual. And during this white knight exercise, they would practice drinking poison and killing themselves with him in what was known as a revolutionary suicide. And he wouldn't sit there and poison it every time or anything like that. It was more like, let's all take our lives together because we are one in this kind of thing. And that's how he presented it. Well, unfortunately, the last one was the real one, and it resulted in about 910 people dying. 300 of those were children. By children, we mean anybody under the age of 17. So it was a huge hit. I mean, like, he knocked out everybody. And people that survived that, there were still like 13 more that when they got back home, they fucking killed themselves.
Because of all the horrors that they had, they were brought up in. There were kids that didn't know a life outside of Jonestown because of how long this society lasted. I don't know if you wrote down the, and I don't remember the ingredients off the top of my head, of the Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah, it wasn't exactly Kool-Aid. It was actually Flavor Aid. But if you watch any of the documentaries, they actually show that they bought like American products, and one of them was Kool-Aid. So that's hearsay. But it was laced with cyanide.
It was cyanide, volume, and I think like 2 or 3 different other drugs and chemicals.
Mama's night juice, and that is definitely not a painless way to go. And whatever they used for the injection afterwards, so anybody that refused to take that Kool-Aid was either injected or shot on site. Yeah. So the lifespan of people getting out of there was pretty low.
So that's the whole saying, don't drink the Kool-Aid, or any of those derivatives of that statement came from. It was from Jim Jones, his Jonestown. It took almost 1,000 people to die so you could get that stupid saying.
So many people. And all this went down on November 18th of 1978. That still known as one of the largest suicides known in history.
Like they were a suicide cult. So not all cults are suicide cults.
Right.
But
it wasn't supposed to be... It feels like it wasn't supposed to be a suicide cult. It felt like they were definitely misled into the whole thing, and that's why so many people still ended up drinking it and dying. Several people didn't trust him, and those are the ones that still got to live today. One of the survivors, I think, was one of his sons. I can't remember whether it was actually biologically adopted or one of the I announce you as my son kind of thing.
It's quite possible that it could have been his son because he was one of many cult leaders that was very prolific in his lovemaking. Yeah, where a hole was a hole.
Yeah. This dude got around.
But so I mean, there's a good chance that I know that sounds kind of fucked up and mean, but it is fucked up and mean.
It is fucked up and mean.
And that's the thing. A lot of
the only one getting some in Jonestown was Jim Jones himself.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately some of the times
that's how he made it happen. Like, you were not to be caught fornicating on it.
And some of the times it wasn't rape either.
No.
You know, I mean, some of them didn't want it, but I wouldn't consider that rape. It was just more so like, oh, the leader wants it or father wants it. That sounds so disgusting. Oh, father wants them.
Oh, God. So
But,
dirty.
You know, unfortunately, that's how some of these leaders work.
Yeah. Well, one of his sons, that was the survivor, got to deliver a final fuck you from Jim Jones. And what Jim Jones did was donated the rest of the cult's money to the Soviet Union. 3 briefcases full of cash. Absolutely full of cash, delivered to the Soviet embassy located in Georgetown, not too far from the site of where he was. So that was how much Jim Jones absolutely despised American government and all that shit. Like, that was a big fuck you.
That's not surprising.
It's not that surprising. I
mean,
just...
with a warped mind, in order to be this kind of leader to begin with,
Yeah.
you know, it's you're going to have enemies, and you're going to create your own. You're going to fabricate your own.
The whole time I was trying to do research on him, I'm like, how did he feel like he got one over on him? Because obviously his idea of creating a better version of what he saw
Pretty much, you're
failed.
not going to take me down.
Yeah, you're not going to take me down. And he gave it to, at our time, the worst enemy he possibly could. So, kudos to that douchebag. But that resulted in a movie getting made about him. Many movies.
I was going to say, like, there's many movies and documentaries based off of Jim Jones and his cult itself.
Yeah, this one, being loosely based on him, was directed by Ty West, written and directed by Ty West, and presented by Eli Roth, known as The Sacrament, released in 2013.
We've been to some of the most chaotic, war-torn places in the world, but never for something as bizarre as this.
Here we are. Welcome to Eden Parish.
You guys built all this?
Father had a vision, and we built heaven here on earth.
And this was, in comparison to the destruction that Jim Jones had, nowhere near. But it still gave you a pretty good idea on the fear that was seen through the eyes of the people on the Jonestown property. The father in this one was played by Gene Jones. That's his actual fucking name. He was actually Sweet Dave in The Hateful Eight. That was another role that he might be well known as playing.
All right.
And this movie was about 2 journalists set out to document their friend's journey to reunite his estranged sister. They track her to an undisclosed location where they are welcomed into the remote world of Eden's Parish, a self-sustained rural utopia composed of nearly 200 members and overseen by a mysterious leader known as the Father. It quickly becomes evident to the newcomers that their paradise may not be as it seems. Eden's Parish harbors a twisted secret. What started as just another document shoot becomes a fight for survival. And throughout the whole movie, it feels like almost kicks off immediately. It feels like they skipped a few steps, and over the next couple days, everything started to crumble, and these guys are just like, let's get what we have and get the fuck out.
It starts with when Jonestown actually got interesting, the part that we all know about.
Right.
You know, not, like, again, Jim Jones, his start, or all the things that he had to do to get to this point, but it kicks off, you know, in South America. Right.
This whole movie almost feels like it was very close to being a documentary with the way they followed it around. They changed, either they embellished or they slightly left out some of the other happenings. But for the most part, it's got a strong base from the original occurrence, and the head count was a lot smaller. Like in this movie, it was 148 people ended up killing themselves out of the 200.
If only.
Like,
no, I mean, if only that
like,
was.
No, like that's a huge difference. I mean, it wouldn't. I feel like it wouldn't still be talked about today if it was as small.
Oh, I mean, as big as cults and serial killers are nowadays, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, you're.
Like, I've learned
right.
a lot because you're just seeing it through. You have TV channels that are nothing about, like, it's nothing but, how to get away with murder.
Yeah, right.
48 hours later, whatever the name of the shows are.
The whole documentaries on, like, the Night Stalker and shit like that. Which, of course, Jim Jones would get talked about eventually.
Maybe, this is what's helping prevent some of these cults or serial killers nowadays, because we are at a pretty big low. Sorry, that just sounded weird.
It's like there's a shortage in murder these days.
Well, it's not so much murder, but in serial killers. Because one, it's harder to get away with murder nowadays. Yeah. Thankfully, it's harder to get away because there's always going to be sickos, regardless. But I'm curious if it's all these podcasts and TV shows that are helping kind of like curbing that urge.
Well, there's some of these. Yeah, there's what is it? Those like Reddit forums and things like that. They're actually helping solve a lot of things. I can't remember what the documentary was called, but it was don't touch the fucking cats. I can't remember what it was on. It was on Netflix, but it was about this guy that'd go around and killing cats, and eventually these murders, this killing of cats in these most fucked up ways ended up escalating into him killing people. And the whole time there's a forum that's trying to help track down this guy because he hurt a cat. Oh, fuck no, don't hurt Kitty.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
Like, I'm kind of okay with the 900 people, but don't kill a dog.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm almost joking. You know?
But yeah, I mean, I feel like with
cats?
technology these
they're hard
days,
to catch to begin with. I mean, all right, that's kind of impressive because cats are a lot quicker and agile than dogs. I mean, so he didn't take the easy way out.
Yeah, but this guy ended up being taken down because of the community.
Saying that joke. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm keeping that in.
What is it like? What is it? The Unsolved Mysteries. You know how they have the report and shit like that. It feels like people are actually taking that to heart and reporting shit, and they're actually catching some of these motherfuckers these days because of technology and communication.
I wish I could remember what actually started it too, but it was, because it was harder. It was easier to get away with killing mass people like cults or, even serial killers, and that's what that show was. America's Top 10. Like all that stuff, and they did help out. Because sometimes it was almost a hurting the killer's ego. Like, what? I'm not number one.
Right.
And they go out and they go make a mistake. It works sometimes. Or you have people like BTK that's just a fucking moron. You know?
That asshole gave himself his own name. You don't even want to call him BTK. That was a little bitch.
It's whatever. I mean, he didn't get what he deserved. But
there are other people that did, though. I mean, that the 80s was the time for killers to get fucking crazy, and it's because we still couldn't do a proper fingerprint. It's still hard to get DNA tests done and shit like that, but back then it was fucking impossible. So yeah, we had a fingerprint on a crime scene, but what the fuck does it mean? Like you couldn't always tie it back to the criminal back then. So, and
sometimes it took them forever to get that an inconclusive fingerprint back or like a scan back or something like that.
But when you're in something like a cult, it's almost like you're signing your life away. It's like, no.
Many of
like
them
almost signing contracts saying, no, whatever happens at this commune, I approve of before you even know what the fuck's going to go down there.
I know we should be talking more about this movie. This is probably the last one I'm going to talk about for this moment. But I was just listening to one where this guy was into BDSM, and he would go around, and when he was about to kill these women, he would have them sign their signature on the bottom of 40 pages of blank paper and stuff. So after he killed them, he would actually start typing up messages and all that stuff and sending them around to make it seem like they're still alive. So he got away with it, and I think he was doing this shit back in the fucking 80s until recently. And by recently, I mean I think the 2010s. He went from these letters to doing this on the internet.
That's wild. Holy
Again,
shit.
one of those guys. He was a fucking genius to a point, but
he
was doing
it. Genius. Right.
That's the thing. He was a quick learner. All right, whatever.
That's what the best part is about some of these cult leaders is they're not fucking idiots. I mean,
a lot of them aren't.
They're very charismatic. They are very smart. They know what you want. They know how to get what they want, and they, for the most part, are pretty good at eluding the authorities. Yeah. So that's what Jim Jones did for a vast majority of the time, and that's probably what made him so prolific in the I want to say horror genre, but there's not as many movies. I feel like there's a lot of cult movies, and it's hard to say that he inspired them, but he is kind of like the granddaddy of all cult leaders, man. I mean,
a lot of those movies.
This movie was kind of a showing of it, and it still only slightly touched upon what he did. And it's still, when you're watching it, you feel it's like playing Dead by Daylight. You're sitting there, you feel like you're getting chased by the killer, and all you want to do is fucking escape. You're rooting. One of the few horror movies where you're rooting for the good guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all about Jason. I'm like, go get him, dude. Like, but in this one, I'm like, no, that asshole needs to serve. But in this movie, spoiler alert, motherfucker kills himself. That's how it happens.
I guess don't watch the movie now. I mean,
I feel like with the next one, it most definitely ended up different. With everybody's favorite, Charles Mills Manson, born November 12th, 1934, died November 19th, 2017.
good. He had a birthday before he died.
Yeah, just before he died. He ended up dying of colon cancer. He didn't even get fucked up in prison. This guy lived his whole life in the system, though. So I feel like he was most comfortable inside penitentiaries and shit.
Like, the most time he was free was when he created the Manson family.
Created the Manson family,
Otherwise, he was always incarcerated.
Yeah, the whole time he was incarcerated. The most significant time he was incarcerated was just before he started the Manson family, and that was about 1961. So it's important to know that throughout the whole Summer of Love, which was the decade of the 60s, this guy was incarcerated the whole time. It's like he missed the fucking memo, right? So during his incarceration in 1961, he studied things like Scientology, and he was a big fan of that kind of stuff. That's what he kind of based his religious beliefs as. And as of July of 1961, that's what he listed as his religion, was Scientology. So when he did his preaching in 67, which is when he founded the Manson family, that's the way he'd talk. That's the basis that a spiritual, while dropping LSD, whispering sweet, sweet nothingness in the ladies' ears.
Like, I'm kind of curious. Like, I wonder if he's the one that created the Manson family, or if it was his followers, or if it was newspaper.
It was so from what I understand, the newspaper called it a family, and he's like, "Yeah, I like that, man." Right. And then that's how he got it to stick. But I think before that, it didn't really have a name.
Like, it was just together. Like, you know, they free, like, almost that free love, just kind of a bunch of fucking beatniks.
Yeah, and in comparison to the last cult, this cult was significantly smaller. Like, they all fit into a Volkswagen microbus. And that's how the whole cult became movable. Like, they all became mobile by this, and that's when things started getting hairy. 1967, Manson founded the family, communal religious cult that studied the teachings of Charles Manson himself, drawn from science fiction, the occult, and fringe psychology. This guy was almost off his fucking rocker. But at the same time, if you listen to him beforehand, it felt like he had his wits about him. Like, when he was trying to get his record career taken off, which that was his passion, was music, which is surprising.
He did have an album, and it's actually not bad.
You can listen to it on Spotify, actually. You can listen to Manson's music. It actually doesn't sound that bad if it's your flavor of music. Yeah. I think it's garbage, but I'm not a fan of the Byrds or
the kind
Beatles
of country
or any of that shit. Like, yeah.
It's definitely not for everyone, but it's, as a whole, like, it's really not that bad. His voice isn't that bad. His playing's not.
No.
He is a very good musician.
But that's just the thing. He had his ego very hurt. Charles's obsession with becoming a rock star ended up taking a downfall when Terry Melcher, who was I think he was the guy that signed not the Beatles, but the Beach Boys, which was one of his favorites, pretty much gave him a fuck you, right? And that man, we're just not looking for your sound right now, ended up being the final straw for Manson. And Manson, with this rejection, ended up getting an address. And with that address came Sharon Tate and the Sharon Tate murders. This was a property that he used to own, which is why Manson went to that fucking home. And I think he lived on the back half or some shit like that. He wasn't directly tied to the property or anything like that. But when Manson went up there to try to find him, like, he came up aggressive. This motherfucker was ready. He'd have probably done the business himself if Melcher would have answered the door, but it wasn't him.
I think that's what I remember hearing too. Like he was intending going there to actually kill him, and would have probably killed him right then and there.
Yes.
But this was pre Sharon Tate
Yes.
as well. Like this wasn't like, oh, he showed up in Sharon Tate and is having a fucking party there. Which I don't think it was Sharon Tate's party. It was someone.
No, I think it was. I can't remember what the fucking the party was for. I feel like it was a rap set or something like that with Sharon Tate, and that's kind of what they were somewhat celebrating. But
Then again, Hollywood back in the day too.
yeah, Hollywood,
Famous people.
Hollywood lives, gotta love them.
Hollywood Hills.
This discovery of the location and all that stuff, Charles went back to his group and said, listen, I don't fucking care who's there. You're going to kill them all. And that's pretty much what happened with the Sharon Tate murders. By the end of this whole ordeal, I can't remember. I want to say it was like 5 people ended up being brutally murdered. And I mean, all these 3 or 4 people that went in there and did these murderings, it was clearly their first times doing it. They were led, not physically, but emotionally and mentally led there by Manson to do these killings, and it was their first time doing anything like it. So the brutality was,
and that's still putting it lightly too with what I've heard.
Yeah, like wrote out all pigs must die, kill pigs, and Helter Skelter written in Sharon Tate's blood on the door, on the walls, all this shit. Like they ripped those people apart.
Yeah.
And another one would have happened, I think, if they wouldn't have put a kibosh on it as quickly as possible, because they found
Sharon Tate was also, I think, what was it, 7 or 8 months pregnant as well.
Yes.
And the only reason Polanski was able to go molest kids was, I think he was across making a movie at the time. And I'm saying that because Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski, which is, this crowd would probably know him because of Rosemary's Baby, but he's also done, I think, what is it, French Connection and a couple other good movies.
Yeah, he's an artsy chimo.
Yeah.
This don't get me wrong, dude's an asshole for doing what he does, but I don't think anybody deserved the treatment that Sharon Tate
no
got,
one
for sure.
ever deserves this kind of.
Yeah, it was, and that's the thing. I feel like it was because they couldn't tie Manson to the direct actions of it. Instead of him getting the penalty, he got life in prison. And it doesn't seem like he had the worst fucking life in prison, man. It's weird. To live almost to 80, he lived to 83 years of age before dying of colon cancer.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the thing too. Like, almost any of these serial killers, especially these big, pretty much well-known ones, people love them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not kink shaming or any of that stuff, even though I almost kind of want to kink or shame this kink, but. You know, some of these people get married multiple times while in prison to different women that they've never met him or her, you know, or they only did it behind glass. And it's one I don't personally understand. But a lot of these people don't have a bad life behind bars, which is sickening on its own.
Yeah, well, Manson, in my opinion, had some pretty damn good charm with the way he could swoon ladies. And, I mean, not to mention the help of LSD. It definitely gave him that cutting edge.
Oh, yeah. If you're able to actually, like, you know, swoon.
Yep.
Like, you know, play a guitar and sing to someone, usually you're going to make them kind of fall in love with you.
He had an edge in Hollywood because of it. I mean, he was at least known.
I mean, shit, the best thing that came out of good old Charlie Manson is Marilyn Manson.
Yep.
And even he's having issues on his own.
He's having his own problems, but
that
just goes to show, be careful on who you follow, man. Like, these guys.
Yeah, just because you're family doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Family isn't always everything, especially if it's the Manson family, bro.
Yeah, if last name's Jones, sorry.
That's right.
Or
Rain
Manson,
check, bro.
Get the fuck out.
Now, the movie that was, I want to say inspired, but that's giving it too much credit. One of the movies that came along from these occurrences was The Strangers in 2008.
I didn't care more than words can say.
love you, Jimmy. You're my girl.
There were elements taken from the Manson murders that were put into this movie that you could almost sit there and play by play the Sharon Tate murder from. But mostly what this was Bryan Bertino, who wrote and directed this. When he was growing up, there were a lot of breaking and enterings and things like that in his neighborhood. And that's what inspired this whole movie. But he definitely took little elements from there, from the Sharon Tate murders, and put them into this movie that gave it kind of almost like a familiar feeling to the rest of Hollywood. And one of those things was when they were in the house, to give signs that people were in the house, in lipstick, red lipstick, of course, they wrote hello in lipstick on the walls and killer on the sliding glass door because, you know, shit went down this movie so fucking fast. I mean, it felt like my problem with the movie was the dialogue was very low. It was very quiet. So if you can't make it past the first 30 minutes, you are going to fall asleep.
It's also one of those movies, too, where it has to be in the movie theater because
Yes.
you're going to do it at home. You're going to have the volume way
You're
up
gonna
too high so you can actually
too
hear
low
them.
or too high. So when the action kicks off, you're going to be deaf.
Yeah.
You're going to
That's why I
blow
say
some fucking stuff up.
Sometimes theaters are where it's at for a lot of these movies.
Right. The synopsis behind this one. James Holt and Kristen McKay visit an isolated vacation home to enjoy some time together. However, they are in for a rude surprise when three masked assailants make their stay a nightmare. That's kind of putting it lightly. I wouldn't say that the whole stay at the home was peaceful because it seemed like he proposed. She definitely rejected his ass. So it was already off to a rocky start with this peaceful stay in this home, right? But, these violent acts only brought them closer together. But, yeah, this movie, in my opinion, I don't know. I can see why people would call it a cult classic. It brought back some early home invasion vibes. It had a good lurking vibe to it, but it was so realistic that it was a slow burn. It was too slow of a burn to keep me fucking engaged.
That's one of the things too. This came out during the huge boom in the aughts and the early 2010s where home invasion films were popping off like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know, even with The Purge or Knock Knock, you know, even Disturbia, you know, you had those kind of movies where, you know, where do you feel the most safe? You know, in your own home. You know, so we're going to take it there.
For me, it wasn't about the home invasion ones. It was more about the touring ones. You know what I mean? Like Hostel. That shit stuck with me a little hard. Like, yeah, be afraid to go to Europe. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want you in Eastern Berlin, bro.
That's the thing. I want to say that probably helped deter a lot of stupid Americans to go over there.
Yeah.
Thankfully. You know?
Keep the dumb ones over here, I guess. Shit. But
there are jokes there. I'm not going to say them right now.
But yeah, The Strangers was probably the biggest one that he inspired. But there were so many other movies that were made directly based off of it. But he only had the one thing. The biggest thing about him was that he wanted to become a musical rock star. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get there. But there are plenty of rock stars that took some inspiration from him. I dare say Rob Zombie, but I wouldn't say that Rob Zombie based his look off of him. There were just some creepy factors,
like some imagery off of him.
Slight imagery, but you could also pull that from everywhere else. But Marilyn Manson is definitely a big one. And I want to say that it might have been charisma that drew him into it because, I mean, I wouldn't think that he'd be a fool to fall for that bullshit. But I do think that he made that mark. He was like, no, that guy, he did have something about him. You know what I mean?
It's also kind of going off the topic again on music. I know I brought up Marilyn Manson just a moment ago, but I also want to say this movie was also influenced off of a French film, which if you watch our French episode, we talk about it for a short minute. I want to say it was called Them. Mm-hmm. I'm almost positive it was called Them. So it was pretty much the same story where you had these kids kind of trying to do a house invasion from someone that just moved in, you know, almost like this. They didn't really just move in, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. They were kind of freshly moved in, but it wasn't brand new to them, yeah.
But then you had these kids that were masked up, and pretty much the whole moral of the story is the same thing as The Strangers. And when it actually happened, they were just the kids, when the kids were asked, "Why'd you do this?" And like, they wouldn't play with us.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's, oh man, I can't remember the line, because the line from The Strangers is the Stranger's line.
Oh yeah.
Oh, like The Stranger even has, that's like in all their fucking movies, even the one that just recently came out, The Strangers Chapter 1, is Tamra there.
Tamra here?
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's kind of one of those nice, kind of creepy,
Right.
nice, simple little lines. It's like,
They were looking for somebody else, but they found you instead.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck it, we'll play with these guys.
I'm kind of curious because I've only seen The Strangers and Strangers Chapter 1. I think there's other 2 or 3 movies.
Yeah, I want to say there's 1 or 2 more after that. One's just coming out.
Yeah, and there's Chapter 2 and 3 coming out. But I'm curious if they ever said, "Oh yeah, Tamara's in back. She'll get to you in a moment."
Yeah, right.
I'm
Throw
curious
for a loop a little bit, right?
I'm curious if that would change the whole like story a little bit. Like, oh, okay, bye. You know, like on to the next house.
Right. But yeah, I feel like it's pretty easy to see how you have an influence when you're a cult leader in the horror genre, especially when we're talking about the music genre, and when those two worlds collide, it's easy to get a cult-like following. And you have bands like Slipknot call their followers the Maggots. I wouldn't say that that's like a cult, but I mean, well,
it's a
how
cult.
about Insane Clown Posse with their Juggalos and things like that? Like, we could draw a line there. I don't have a problem with them. I'm saying that
I'm just kind of curious on how magnets work.
fuck.
I'm not touching them, unfortunately.
And then there's Ghost. Ghost feels like they are gaining that. They are definitely satanic in their word and stuff like that, but they're not by any means diabolical.
No, like it's a lot like. So a lot of people, when they hear heavy metal, you know, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent, I guess. They think that it's evil music and stuff. Like, it's not really evil. Yeah, some of the dialogue could be evil and satanic at times, or diabolical, or even talk about Satan. It's not about Satan itself, really. Sometimes they're just talking about a story,
Right?
You know, and it's not there so much praising. It's just an act. You know, you have so many people that are in these goth bands or these, you know, like these crazy looking bands, and they're nice guys. Some of them are fucking Christians,
Right.
You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Slayer, the only person in that band that's satanic is Terry King. The rest of them are pretty fucking Christian. They just are all about the imagery. They perform it well, very well. But it takes one asshole in a crowd to misinterpret a song and make things go haywire, and that's pretty much what Manson did with Helter Skelter.
Yeah. You know, that's kind of like another one of those things that the Beatles loosely influenced Charles Manson, because Charles Manson thought the Beatles wrote a song about a slide for him.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's amazing things happen when you're hopped up on LSD.
Yeah.
You know, very influential itself. And sometimes
Don't do drugs, or at least do them wisely.
do drugs safely.
Yeah.
You know, don't
Consistency is not key. Take a break. No, you don't agree with that one? Yeah.
I you know, my take on drugs is the same way it is on cults. You know, they could be great, you know, as long as you're not hurting others. As long as you're only hurting yourself and you're not bringing other people down with you or inflicting harm without consent, fucking go for it. You know, if you need someone to kind of help be there for you, rather be it substance, you know, or a podcast or a movie or a band or, you know, a church, any form of religion, you know, like I just draw the line on, you know, if you're doing harm willingly or unwillingly towards other people, you know, like that's a no-go.
Fucking get help.
Yeah. I mean, help is out there. There are other ways around it, you know? I mean,
yeah. But yeah, these
kind of sorry to put on a sad note a little bit right now.
Kind of.
It's true,
I mean,
though. Who knows? This could be that one episode that someone watches, like, where they're tightening a noose. You know?
Right.
And it's like, who knows? I don't know.
Well, either way, don't follow cults. Don't do it. There's nothing good from it.
There's another joke there.
Don't.
I'm being
drink
nice.
the Kool-Aid. It's being nice.
I am being very
Fuck
nice.
that shit.
I am not being. Oh, I almost said the P word. I don't know if you have anything else. If you wanted to talk about that vampire cult.
No,
or
the
any of that
vampire
stuff.
cult was very, very, in my opinion, it was hard to find things on because it felt like it got washed out a little bit.
Do you remember the movie decently well?
I remember the movie a little bit. I felt like the vampire cult from 1997 was a very quick-lived thing with what is like 5 kids.
Yeah.
Only 2 of them trying to be hard influences on this.
This isn't going in right now. Like, I'm actually like,
But yeah,
genuinely
that-
asking you if you could
all
pull it
of
up on your
that-
phone and be good with it. I could kind of remember a decent
I don't
amount
think
of the
I don't think I can remember too much of it because I couldn't find much more on the cult itself. I found that movie, and that was about as far as I could get, as far as a documentary on it or anything like that.
Is
Like,
the movie any good, or is it worth recommending to people?
the movie was shit. It was so bad. The actors in it were bad. Nobody has a career off of this.
Go ahead
movie.
and pull up the movie so we can at least say the name when it came out and who directed it. And feel free to divulge whatever on how bad the movie is or how politely you want us to talk about it. Because I could kind of talk about this could just be like a 10-minute, like even
Okay.
a 5-minute segment just because of, more than merely excited. I kind of enjoy just that. Just throw that little stupid shit out there.
Okay. Vampire Clan, based on a true story of the murder of a girl's parents in Eustis, Florida. 5 teens in a vampire cult on the run are captured by police in New Orleans. And this movie...
That actually talks about the cult itself. That's a whole story. Like, so this is the vampire... what is it? The Floridian vampire cult that I think took place predominantly in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken.
Kentucky is where it started, and they moved it to Florida to pick up one of their members, and then they got caught in Louisiana.
Oh, it's like that's something like.
It was like that little triangle.
So this is like where the things like when it comes to.
It was, by the way, that movie was released in 2002, and the happenings of this cult happened in 97.
Yeah, so
It was
it's a fairly
that quick,
recent.
yeah.
A quick money grab.
Yeah.
Cults are a big thing. Let's make a movie off of it.
Cults and vampires. This is before they started Sparkle.
So, and that's the thing. Like, they're not even the only vampire. All right, so kind of going back on. Oh gosh.
Directed by John Webb and written by Aaron Pope. This one, I don't feel like I recognized anybody or anything off of this. From like when I watched it, I'm like, this is years, decades down the road, and I still don't know who the fuck these people are in this movie. You know what I mean? Not that says a whole lot about it, but
Talking more about the cult. Like I'll kind of go back to Marilyn Manson, kind of swing out connective tissue. This bitch is during the whole Columbine shooting. When there were the 2 kids or whatever. There was a documentary that was made about it, and he ended up asking Marilyn Manson, "So what would you tell these kids? If they were still around?" And Marilyn Manson just said, "I wouldn't say anything. I would listen." And
Good
I feel
job,
like
Manson.
that was a very simplistic and great thing to do, because when it came to this clan, it was pretty much a group of 5 kids. 2 were pretty much all 4 of them were following the lead because they were LARPers.
yep, pretty much.
They were
vampire LARPers. Really, only 2 of them actually were. It felt like the girls weren't behind that bullshit. But.
It was a lot of how their cult kind of started a little bit. It was kind of D&D based, Dungeons and Dragons based, where I can't remember the name of the game they were playing, but it was vampire based, of course.
Yeah.
Where instead of playing the
Well,
like
it's
John
like
Constantine,
there's
instead of trying to play the guys trying to kill the vampires, you were the vampires actually trying to kill others. And if you drank too much blood or killed too many people, you became more insane and couldn't control yourself. So they made this tabletop game into a real life situation where I can't remember the main leader of this group, his name, but he was.
It was Roderick Rod. Justin Ferguson.
Rod.
Yes,
oh,
Rod.
I remember that now. He thought he was a vampire. He was charismatic in that way where he was just like, oh, I'm this ancient vampire, and I just forgot about vampire ways because I'm so old and I haven't drank human blood in 300 years. He was he was able to influence his friends, and their friends were outcast as well. So, I mean, it's easy for outcast kids to kind of group up together.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you have a crush on someone, it's that much easier to listen and follow their lead.
Here's a little bit more on the storyline. Well, a better description is 5 friends welcome a real life vampirism into their lives. Mm-hmm. They cut their own wrists and let their friends drink from them. Rod, the leader, and a very psychotic young guy ends up killing Heather's parents and stealing their car to go on a crazy road trip. His behavior begins to frighten his friends, and though they went along with it at first, all end up in prison except for Heather. Heather was the...
she was the most innocent.
She was the most innocent, the last one to join the group, the small group. And she was strongly, once again, misled into it. And as soon as things started going down, she instantly wanted to reject and go back, but it was too late.
Well, it was to go back to find her parents and all that stuff, because the last thing that she wrote to her notes was, "We're going out to Europe. Don't worry about me. I'm good. I'll be safe.
Yeah.
Love. I want." It's not verbatim, but it was pretty much that was what she left her parents.
Yeah.
So that was.
All of them being angsty teens,
Mm-hmm.
this family being well off and things like that. I don't think that they would have found that note and been fucking pissed or terrified.
Your teenage daughter just leaves the house and
this isn't one of those, it's just another latchkey kid with too much money.
Yeah,
no.
she said she's going to be okay. Bye, daughter.
Yeah, right.
No. But the 2 males of this group, Rod, they ended up brutally murdering
the fucking crowbar, dude.
with the crowbar. I mean, to the point where I think the mother was unrecognizable because her head was bashed in. He stuck the crowbar through the father's heart and just left it there.
Yeah.
Or stabbed it at least once. I think he just left it there, or he threw it in a river. I can't remember.
And in this movie, they didn't show the brutality of it all. I feel like they left you to use your imagination to see what happened, and they didn't even imply that Rod did it. It was the crazy guy that was along with it. This crazy guy, and when I say crazy, I mean that. I'll go ahead and take it in the worst way possible. Rod fed him his blood, and this guy believed that he had gained the vampire's powers and was stronger than ever before. So
the movie was definitely more fantastic.
Yeah. And in this whole movie, I was like, all right, so are they going to spin off of it and kind of make these guys actually act like vampires? Is this going to be like Lost Boys with a bunch of teenagers? No. These guys were just...
very influential teens.
Yeah.
Were
took
led
LARPing
astray.
to a wrong level. Yep.
And that's pretty much the story. Like, we've kind of said it throughout that. The movie definition kind of ruins a whole cult, but it's not even a cult. It's just a group of friends, which I would not really want to consider, a couple kids a cult. Personally,
No.
I wouldn't want.
No, and I can agree with you on that. He didn't even have as strong as a following as Manson would. Like, I do believe that if he'd have been able to keep going, he could have gotten as strong as a following, because this guy didn't get the death penalty. They were talking about it at first, but because of his age, he ended up getting life in prison. This guy's still in prison.
Like,
so
him and his mom was fucked up too. Like, she was writing sexual notes to a 14-year-old, and that's predominantly why she's in prison.
Jesus.
Because I don't think she really did anything except incite child molestation, or like the molestation of a kid.
Yeah.
And Rod and his mom both still believe that they're vampires, or at least they did when they got incarcerated.
Yeah, but they're aging. They're definitely aging. I mean, well, I guess he could end up getting out within his lifetime. It ended up when he was like
next
17 or 19 or something.
Parole
like
hearing was, I think, a couple years back, but I think he got denied that. Awesome little tidbit. I'll write the name here on the screen because I can't remember the actual name of the book, but potentially one of the Bibles that they read, like the Vampire Bible, was possibly created out here in Lacey, Washington.
Ooh, fun. And here I thought nothing happened in Washington.
Yeah, it's a shitty website because I visited it
And that's
once, and
why-
I wanted to buy the book. I'm like, I'm kind of curious on what these kids were reading, what they took from it.
That's what brought Glittery Vampires.
But
to us.
it's
a fucking book. And you're not
No,
talking
that-
about Twilight either. It's not the Twilight Saga that he's talking about.
it's the Lost Boys. They had glitter in their blood. You know, it's now that you can see it on 4K now.
No, I feel like it's just like Tinkerbell. Sprinkle
She's a
little
mean
fairy
bitch,
dust.
man.
She-
So let this be a warning to you guys. If you're watching this and you just got adopted into a family, or a group, if it's at school or if it's at work or, the new church you went to, and there happens to be, somewhere in there that's like Jones, or they're trying to, help you open up your eyes, and group leader is Manson. Or if anyone in that group is named Bridget, get the fuck out.
Fucking leave. Bridget's a danger.
All right.